She was only 18 and she OD'd in a lonely place. A younger brother would think of the last time he saw her face. Both branded by the abuse that forged their early bond, thrown into a system that never healed the hearts that they had pawned. Having been mortally wounded before she reached the age of 7, she would know a lot about hell, but would she ever know heaven? Unable to grow into a flower because someone had crushed the tiny seed, leaving her forever torn inside with a terrible aching need. A hole that was so deep inside that nothing could ever fill it. A beautiful spirit trying to fight to live, despite the history that would kill it. 2 children adopted by a mother, ill-equipped to heal their pain. She tried to love them better, but she could not erase the stain. No matter how many times she swabbed their wounds, she couldn't stop the bleeding. She couldn't pull her daughter from the collision in which her path was leading. And they brought with them the chaos they were forged in after birth. They couldn't escape the damage from having been grown in poisoned earth. The system unprepared to offer these children any measure of assistance, so they threw her to the streets because her inability to trust caused her resistance. They kicked her out of the psychiatric hospital because she tried to take her life. Her cutting to ease her pain was considered attention-seeking with a knife. A soldier in a war with no army to protect her, bleeding from the wounds caused by a world that would reject her, dragging her damaged mind and heart across a combat zone, only to die far away in a city all alone, like the child soldier in another country, too young to understand why no one came to rescue her or even lent a hand, having been incubated in the predator's lair who would gladly eat their young, pulled out when it was too late because she already had been stung. The poison seeping into every relationship she tried to cultivate, horrors that were far too deep and scary to ever excavate. Yet deep inside there was a spirit belonging to a creative child, and all that she could have been before she was defiled, before she was abandoned by a society who saw her as damaged goods, who simply walked away because they knew they could. Branded as addicted, the label reduced her worth and hid the true reality that she was damaged after birth, that our social system waited too late to intervene and then expected her to forget the horror she had seen, thinking that transplanting her would be enough to make a difference as long as they were silent and never made an abusive inference, stupidly believing the notion that children will forget, only so much later to realize it was an assumption they'd regret. But then, unwilling to admit their mistake, they simply walked away until the life that had destroyed her followed her to that final day, the day she died alone, away from the others who had loved her, crashing into the collision that the society had shoved her, dying an addict's death, just another human discarded. No one would know her pain, nor how she was disregarded. Only her brother would know for sure the measure of her hurt, and she would be buried silently, her secrets buried in the dirt. And those who did not know her would see her as a failure. They would never stand up and admit it was society that failed her. And what about her younger brother? Did he have a chance to make it? He had been through as much as her. Is there a way that he could take it? Could he rise up from the ashes of his sister's painful end? Is there a way to take his broken heart and find a way for it to mend? Can we at least save one child of the children left unprotected? Can we at least make up for one child the feelings of being rejected? Everything a child deserves had been at one time ripped away. His sister died a lonely death. She never got to have her say. Will you look down on him as you once looked down on her? Can you see the disdain you reflect when you look into the mirror? What right have you to judge him when you did nothing to protect him? You're as much a part of his abuse, so you have no right to reject him. If the scales of justice were balanced, there's a price you'd have to pay for the sorrow of a brother standing by the grave in which his sister lay, for the life played out in nothing but a trauma reenactment, a child that suffered a lifetime from the wound of a detachment. Instead, you get away with the crime that you've committed, where you left a child sentenced to a life where love was unremitted. But I am a witness to this crime, and I will not forget the life of abuse you threw back after you caught her in your net.